Welcome, my name is Jill Jonathan and I'm with Red Wine and Blue. We are a community of women who use digital media and friend-to-friend organizing to change the world one suburb at a time. And one way we do this is through conversation. And it's a really fun way to do it, to be honest. So today we are going to have a conversation. Joe, as in Jojo from Jers, Joe Codrucci will be joining me. It looks like she's just joined, so I'll add her in just a second. She and I will be having a conversation with an incredible author, Ibi Zoboi. And I cannot wait for this conversation. We've been trying to have these IG lives with different authors because let's face it, there are a lot of books that are being pulled from the shelves, and that's very concerning. So we want to talk to the authors about what's going on, and we want to promote and help them with their work and share their stories. Welcome. We're so excited to talk to you. And my first question for you is, I know that you put a lot of thought into the color that you wear. And so I was very curious to see what color you're going to wear today. And I see it's a beautiful green. So just let us know, why did you choose this color for today, this Friday?
I love mythology. I call myself an armchair mythologist. And, a long time ago, I had this guru shaman person. Actually, she's very well known and she's like a celebrity kind of spiritual advisor, and she has this not idea, but it's true. The days of the week are named after gods and goddesses, and Friday is named for Frida, the goddess of love and fertility. And if it's Latin or some of the Latin languages, it's Viernes for Venus, Vendredi in French. So Friday, I wear green for the goddess of fertility and love. And it's someone, I was telling someone that, and they said that it's comforting, isn't it? And it is comforting. And I am now calling myself neuroatypical. And I think it's important for me as a Black woman in her 40s to say, you know what, I've always been neuroatypical, and I'm going to claim it at this ripe young age of 40 something. But yeah, I've been doing this my entire adult life, and it's become habit now.
Oh, I love that. I know. And Joe and I mean, we're women in our 40s too, and we've talked about this before. I love being in my 40s, honestly. I just feel more like myself every day. I would not go back for 1 second. So
yeah, and I love how intentional it is, but I also love it sort of echoes with the book, your newest book.
She's got her copy too. We're like, look at this.
Thank you. Yay. Yeah. Oh, you have hardcovers. Yeah, that's so wonderful.
I love. Yay. Woo! It's a powerful story about discovering who you are in the world and fighting for that person and having courage to be your own revolution. I love this idea because it really just sort of echoes back to what you just said about realizing who you are and being leaning into that, being okay with that. So tell us about that.
Well, yeah, this book, I love it. It's a book of my heart, and I took a lot of risks to write it. If you're familiar with Tara Westover's Educated, that was a book I wanted to, it was an inspiration because while Tara Westover does not look like me, she's a white woman in Utah. I remember reading it and said, there are Black people just like this. There are alternative lifestyles. There are people who live on the fringes of society, and they take it into their own hands to live according to what they think the Constitution is supposed to be. And my character, Nigeria Jones, was born into and grew up in a separatist community. And her father is the leader of that community. And her father truly believes in the Constitution, and in a way that he's contrary to everything American. So she grows up homeschooled, plant-based vegan, and she visits the shooting range. And when her mother disappears, she has to find out what life she wants for herself because her mother started having different ideas. And this begins her journey to self-actualization. It's a coming of age story. I tell the story of a community that we don't often see in the media, and complicated family dynamics. And it's also about body autonomy. That's the most important part of this story: body autonomy and reproductive rights.
Which are really lacking, right? That's really lacking in terms of like this conversation about reproductive rights. Stories like these are not in the conversation in the mainstream. So it's like especially important that you're sort of drawing attention to it,
especially
like you
for
said.
young adult books. This is a young adult book, YA,
Yeah.
but it's not only for teenagers. Young people could read it, but we all remember being 16 and 17 and questioning our parents, our communities, our schools. And I don't often see the conversation now we don't even say post Roe v. Wade anymore, but it's who is the new, the case that went to the Supreme Court. Her name is escaping me, but we now need to start having these conversations again in a different way. Body autonomy, reproductive rights, but especially for girls that we don't often see questioning these ideas.
Right. And as far as I know, this book is not yet being challenged because it's not on the shelves yet. But it's very likely, right, given current trends, that this book, along with American Street, which was your first novel, which was challenged in schools, will likely meet some sort of challenges as well. And there's this idea that, I'm curious to get your input on a lot of that. But in terms of how important it is that these stories are told and these girls are exposed to these stories, but the impact of them being denied, access to stories like these, stories like American Street. Like, I just wanted to see, what your thoughts are on
as recently as last week, I got a Google alert that my name was on a local news because the school board was challenging American Street, and that school board meeting was a little bit hectic. One of the parents were reading passages from American Street, and it would just happen to be a passage where the kids were cursing. They were potty mouthed kids, as all kids are, and it got a little bit heated. But it really breaks my heart. But I also think it's par for the course. In 2020, so many of our books were on the bestseller list. I had two books on the bestseller list in 2020. One an indie bookstore and the New York Times bestseller. And 1 year later, our books are being banned. And it's one of those, like, okay, 2 steps forward, 10 steps back in terms of this country. And I don't let it stop me from doing what I do. I doubled down with this book in Nigeria Jones. And I think some parents say sometimes it's the language, it's the violence, but I'm waiting to see what happens with Nigeria Jones, because the vulgar language is not there. The violence in American Street is not happening in Nigeria Jones. So it'll be interesting to see what reasoning they have here. And if it's anything I say about the American Constitution, if it's anything that I say about a Black girl, shooting a rifle at a shooting range, that tells me a lot about what this country thinks about its city. Although, we already have the answers, but not that I want it to be banned, not that I want it to be challenged, but if it does, I'll be curious to see what the reasons are.
How does that feel, as an author? I mean, this is your livelihood, and I imagine this is an incredibly personal profession that you're in. Like, these stories that you're sharing, I'm sure you tap into your own experiences. I mean, how does it even feel for someone to say, oh, I don't think that's appropriate to be on the bookshelves of schools when you're writing for young adults? Like, I'm just curious, like, how does that feel?
I'm not, I was born in Haiti, and in Haiti, right now getting a lot of news about Haiti just being in chaos right now, but it's not all of Haiti. It's Port-au-Prince, the capital. And we don't get to see Cap Haitian. We don't get to see the rural parts where people are visiting. Life is continuing. So in Haiti, under a dictatorship, writers were sent into exile, musicians, actors, any form of artists, even when they're not speaking against the government, they feared for their lives. But novelists were sent into exile, journalists were killed. So this is where I come from. This is the literary tradition. That is my foundation. So I'm still here, publishers are still buying our books, thankfully, and teachers and librarians are still stocking our books on their shelves. I have visited, by the end of this year, I will have visited Texas 6 times. And Texas is the state with the most book bannings. And that's a testament to how many librarians and educators are pushing back. And when I went to the Texas, I believe it's the Texas Council of Teachers of English Language Arts, I was one of their keynote speakers, and they were adamant in saying, no, that's that district and that district. And sometimes it's the next district over that is challenging a book that that they have on their curriculum. So of course, Texas is a big state, but I do want to acknowledge the educators and librarians who are pushing back, and they are fearful of parents getting ideas, but for the most part, they're doing the job of, being on the right side of history. And I said this at the conference, and someone corrected me and said the left side of history.
It's true. I mean, yeah, Texas is particularly bad when it comes to this sort of thing. It's not a coincidence, right? Like there's this idea that all of this is under the umbrella of CRT and anti-CRT, as if that actually existed in these school districts, which of course it doesn't. But I'm so curious too about your point about how Nigeria Jones, to see how they might try to challenge it, will expose sort of the fragility of their argument, right? That this is some anti-CRT agenda, when that's actually just not happening. But I think, one of the things, my neighbors are from Haiti. Yeah, they're lovely, amazing people. They go every summer and spend basically the whole summer there.
Yeah, there's a certain type of Haitian that goes back to Haiti.
Yeah, they do. And they always come back happier and more well rested than I've seen them all year long. But in American Street, it's your story. A lot of the book is about, you're inspired by what you went through. How does that sort of resonate in this one as well, Nigeria Jones? Are there pieces of your life?
All my books have pieces of my own experiences, but no singular book is completely my story. I did not come here at 16 in the way Fabiola did in American Street, and I did not grow up in a separatist community the way Nigeria did. So I am pulling from my immigrant experience for both books. The thing to know about Haiti is that, of course, we all know that it was the first successful slave revolution in all of history. And when we think about radical movements throughout history, radical Black movements, Haiti was a huge inspiration for Black Americans. It was the idea that liberation can be achieved, revolution can be achieved, and from Haiti came something called the Negritude movement, which were Francophone countries like Martinique, even Senegal, where these scholars started presenting this idea of liberation for Black people. And what does it mean and what does it take, especially after all of Africa was colonized? So Haiti was at the forefront of that idea of being sovereign after being colonized and enslaved. So I'm bringing my Haitian identity to Nigeria Jones, where the Haitian Revolution meets American Revolution and the French Revolution. And of course, those were all countries and nations. But what does it mean to have personal revolution when your father is fighting for revolution for a people, but you as a girl have certain freedoms that are not being met? I said a lot.
Right. No, I love it. I love, the idea of this personal revolution sort of on a smaller scale, but it's obviously a very large scale for an individual, set against the context of a larger revolution when it comes to, nations of people. And I love that the way that echoes. And I think that there's this interesting idea of the way the book is set up in terms of this framework with set against sort of a remixing of the Constitution that is so original, so unique. And there's this question about whether or not the founding fathers envisioned liberty and democracy for girls.
Absolutely.
Like Nigeria
That's exactly
Jones.
why I included those passages. Her father is fighting for a certain kind of freedom for people. So what does it mean to be Black and want to live separate from society? And I said it in Philadelphia because we all know about the Amish. And the 80s, 70s and 80s, there was the MOVE organization, and there were, like, if you think of hippies, think like 10 times more, right? They were separatists in that they didn't believe in caging animals. They grew their hair long. They didn't believe in a lot of technology, sort of like Luddites. So who gets to have those freedoms? Who gets to say, okay, we have our Second Amendment rights and we're going to practice it? And who gets to be opposed to that? Who gets to, let's say, have multiple wives? And these are not things I necessarily agree with, but I'm questioning who gets to have certain liberties. And we've always asked those questions in our books, but for this particular book, I'm framing it in a atypical community. So there are some passages that were deleted in the book, and I wanted to let readers know about the Black women who were in the lives of our founding fathers, the Black girls. And we never question that and think about the role of Black girlhood in the founding of this country. And I started to tell the story of Oney Judge and George Washington. And of course, we know about Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. If they owned human property, were they so virtuous that, they were monogamous? Let's think about that. And when we think about the role of women and girls in this country, you think about how they swayed the founding fathers in the building of this country.
Right. No. Conversations we don't have often
and that's
enough,
for
sure.
That's why I feel so alarmed with this book banning and censoring and this attack on public education of basically trying to rip curiosity out of education of our children. And that's what you're saying, question, what about this? What about this? What about this? And that's what's a little terrifying for me is, the lack of wanting to teach critical thinking skills and curiosity and questioning things. I feel like there's a stronghold of that, especially in the public education right now.
Absolutely. And out of curiosity comes creativity. That's what scares me most, is creativity and innovation. I think these parents and whomever are not thinking ahead, right? They're not thinking big picture. If you don't have these young people asking questions, how will they begin to create something new? How will they see what's missing and what's wrong with their society if they're not presented with a whole set of points of view? It's really self-destructive. I think it's really self-destructive.
Right, but that's probably the goal, right? So that they don't, right? So that they're not curious, so that they don't have ingenuity, so that they aren't creative, so that they don't think for themselves, so that they take what is told to them and accept it as truth. Speaking of Texas, the American Library Association in 2019, well, every year they publish a list of the top 100 most challenged books. In 2019, it was dominated by books that featured LGBTQ characters and themes. But in 2020, and since 2020, while some of those books obviously are still on the top of the list, there are also increasing numbers of books about racism. So it's not, we're not inventing, this is not imaginary, right? This is sort of feels like intentional and coordinated. And I just wanted to ask you again about the impact of that on authors, for instance, Black authors, but also, on young readers who either will see themselves or see the lives of others that they might not otherwise have experienced.
So I didn't mention the financial aspect, the financial impact on all of this. While yes, the publishers are still publishing our books, I do feel like when a district bans our book, that's a huge number of sales that we are missing out on. You can tell your audience to go buy a banned book, but that's very different from a district buying your book. And when a district buys your book, it's in the curriculum. Classrooms get books. Each student may get a copy of your book, and it's access to information that they would not go out and seek out on their own. So I think 5,000 copies of a book, missing out on that number of book is huge for us. There's in our industry, there's something called the state lists, where a state recommends a book to their school districts, to their schools and libraries. And those state lists are very important. And I'm starting to think about state rights too. And when a state bans your book, that you're missing out on sales as well. So there's individual sales, and then there's the schools that buy units, right? And it's not just one person saying, I will not buy your book. It's an entire state sometimes. So yes, it does hurt our pockets. At the same time, it hurts the children.
Right.
So that's an impact that I don't think we talk enough about. The financial impact and the intellectual impact on young people. And I feel like as if these parents don't want their kids to leave home, right? As if they don't want them to leave town, because how are they going to interact with the world if they don't, if they're not exposed to vulgar language sometimes, right? And that's very simple, and I have kids and I see what they're texting sometimes, and my husband is a high school teacher. So a lot of the times when they're speaking out against these books, they're kind of saying things about us authors too. Not kind of, they are. There's this grooming idea. And they forget that there are several people who work on a book. There's not just the author, there's the editor, there's the agent, there's the copy editor, there's the marketing people, the sales people, the publicity people who all have read the book and have to be in agreement that it's valuable, that it's worthy of being out in the world. And you're not just calling the author all these names, you're calling the entire team behind a book. To say that every 20 people have the same idea of grooming. So I know sometimes people get it wrong. There have been problematic books that have been, questioned. But at the same time, when a book is an award winner, when a book has been in classrooms for years, as with American Street, are you saying all those people are wrong?
Right. And then there's this idea, scaring people with those words, right? Like it's a scary thing to someone to hear, oh, well, that author is a groomer and that book, will indoctrinate your children. And like that they're using these words, and by they, right-wing extremists are using these words baselessly, but to to scare people who might not be paying very close attention or might not be having these kinds of conversations. And it's like really important for us to have these conversations and to talk to authors like you know, to put a face to the work and to the experience. It's incredibly important to fight back against this, like, again, false and baseless narrative that there's harm being done in the pages of these books, because that's the exact opposite to your point about sending our kids out into the world. Jill and I are moms too. We know what our kids talk about. They're going to come across these themes one way or another. And one of the authors we spoke to, I think it was Joe Knowles, you know, said, where is a safer place than within the pages of a book for your child to explore what's out there?
I think someone was asking, my book is called American Street. My newest book is called Nigeria Jones. Black Enough is an anthology, a collection of short stories by 17, including me, Black YA authors has been challenged. Some of the other books that have been challenged have been LGBTQ books. I know The Hate You Give has been challenged. The Poet X has been challenged, and all of those are written by marginalized authors. So I just wanted to put that in there. And one thing I want to add, and you wouldn't know to ask me this, is that what if marginalized mothers, right, and parents have the ability to challenge books? And what books would those be? I don't think we'd have the collective power to do that, right?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, because you are seeing a certain type of parent that's challenging these books.
Right. And I had to read Red Badge of Courage in high school. The Scarlet Letter. Mind you, of course, there's Huck Finn. Of course, I had to read To Kill a Mockingbird. And collectively, and I was in English honors classes, I went to a predominantly white Catholic high school in New York. And collectively, the marginalized parents had no power in challenging a book. And I live in a progressive town right now. And I don't think even the marginalized parents here have the collective power to challenge certain things. I think there are allies and co-conspirators in my town. Thank you. You know, I'm thankful that, you know, my state is not a book banning state, but what books would we challenge if we had that power? And those books that I question are still being taught in the classrooms.
Right. It is a very fascinating question.
Yeah, I am.
And you're in New Jersey, right? You live in Jersey. Yeah, I live in Jersey too. And one of the things that shocked me was that as much as I think I'm paying attention to what's going on with this assault on books, is that in a town, 2 towns over, one very close to where I grew up, there was a book that was challenged and actually was successfully removed from the middle school right here in New Jersey. So I often think it's everywhere. And even if it doesn't necessarily it doesn't touch you or impact you directly right now, like if we don't get ahead of this or get a handle on this, eventually it will. Like, you know, it's crazy to me because I didn't think in New Jersey, right? Like this is going to happen, but it's happening here too. And it's really scary. You know, I think it's incredibly important, again, to have these conversations, because I think a lot of people think, well, that's not happening in my backyard, when I found out that it actually was. And there was this, I don't know if you saw it, but there was this video of a woman on a school board, and she was asked about this kind of question. She was a white woman, and she was asked, you know, why they didn't want this book in school. And she eventually got to the point of, which was, she didn't want her white children to feel ashamed of their whiteness, right? That's one of the things that they don't want to necessarily admit, but they're saying that that's what these books, that's what books with content that feature, you know, Black characters or LGBTQ characters, that they would make a child feel ashamed of their own identity. And that's actually backwards thinking, right? I mean, I would suggest,
I think that they don't want the children to feel guilty. All these books are telling a certain kind of truth. And I know for a fact that if they are reading The Hate You Give. It's not the only type of book like that. They're reading a number of other books that are not The Hate You Give. I know that if a class is reading American Street, they're also reading Shakespeare. They're also reading The Great Gatsby. They're also reading A Raisin in the Sun. And I would want educators to give a range of books. And what makes you think that one book that showcases a certain experience will be the truth for all those books? You know, that's where critical thinking is lacking on the part of the parents.
Yeah. And like you said, you know, you keep hearing in the media and seeing like, oh, we don't want our white children to feel guilty.
Yeah.
But what are marginalized communities or non-white children? What are they feeling? We don't hear about that, and we don't talk about that as much.
Sorry, I have like allergies.
Right. That's all right.
Same.
I think I want to move away from the feeling aspect of it a little bit. I think from being a writer for so long, I sometimes feel readers will latch on to the sadness part or the victimization part of woe is me part of this whole conversation on the part of marginalized, like young people. That is not how I personally feel. I feel a little bit just fired up. It's not sadness. It's not, you know, boo-hoo-hoo. It's more like, good. You want to do this? Good, because your children will rebel. We're not going to have this conversation 10, 15, 20 years from now, because as parents, you all know when you tell your kids not to do something, when you hide something from them, when you take away something for them, they're going to be that much more curious about it. You ban a book. Why? What's that all about? What's in there? So it's a part of just like, okay, this is terrible. This is sad, but thank you. Because what happens is that there is going to be a turnaround. I believe that's human nature, where yes, they're going to grow up. These kids are going to grow up and challenge. And that's what Nigeria Jones is all about. Her father is an activist. Her father thinks that he's doing the right thing for his family and for his community. And here comes 16-year-olds, right? Here comes those adolescent hormones questioning everything. So it's bound to happen. There is going to be a sea change. And I want to see that in my life. You know, I don't think it's that far away. Our children are going to become adults. And I am thinking that these parents are my peers. And sometimes I ask, weren't you watching The Cosby Show like the rest of us? Did you watch Sesame Street and The Electric Company? What happened? And I feel like either like enough is enough. I don't know. It seems like there's it swings. The pendulum is swinging one way or the other all the time.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this conversation because we interviewed Frederick Joseph. He's a friend of Red Wine and Blues. We're huge fans of his. He introduced us to you. And I just wanted to read his review of Nigeria Jones, if you'll indulge me, because this is amazing. To read Nigeria Jones is to have the honor of being invited to one of the most unapologetically Black, womanist, and liberating worlds ever penned. Ibi Zoboi has masterfully woven together a story that explores the dynamism of marginalized people who have often been erased from American literary canon. Through Nigeria and other deeply compelling characters, Ibi has written a love letter to any and everyone who has yearned to feel seen, fought for survival, and been driven by the hope of freedom. Who wouldn't want to read that?
Yeah, and
right?
This story does not take place outside of America, so it's an American story. You have to, like, young people need to know that Black people or any other marginalized group are not constantly in the state of victimhood. That I know of communities, and I come from communities that even when we didn't have access to books, we created our own. There are self-published authors out there. There are parents who don't rely on the classroom to teach their kids their history, very much like white parents do. And this is why I want to move away from the victimhood part. We have Black bookstores. We've always had Black bookstores. However, these communities are not without their flaws, because they're still part of American society. And that's the big question that I ask in Nigeria Jones. Can you truly separate? And as a girl, can you truly be radical in your burgeoning womanhood within a patriarchal system? And I want all young people to start thinking about that. Who gets to have certain freedoms in this country?
That's a great question. And so many things you said, but just I feel like you're echoing what we've heard from other people we've talked to, of we're like seeing a shift. And I can see that too when the young people, I have an 8th grader and a 5th grader, and they're growing up differently than I did, and they're in the suburbs in Ohio. So that's why one thing, these books are so important, because I feel like it's exposing them to things that they don't see on a daily basis or talk about. But when I've been to school board meetings, when we've had high school students come to that, they're like, I don't know why the parents are going crazy. Like, this isn't what we want. And listen, that 16-year-old is going to be able to vote in 2 years.
Yeah.
So in the next few years, we're going to see the kids who are reading these books and who are being exposed to these ideas and questioning and being curious, they're going to be going to the polls as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not to say that everybody's going to change. You might have some sticklers in there, but for the most part, there is a time that they're going to be questioning. And that's a very good thing. Whether or not they have access to these books, they are absolutely going to be questioning and coming up with their own ideas and answers.
Yeah. And like I said, we'll have these books on our bookshop, and we want to encourage, people to buy these. But something that you pointed out that was so interesting is, school districts. And when you're taking away like 5,000 copies, like, is there anything that, people like me and Joe can do about that? Or people who are listening, is there anything that we can do to help with that?
You're doing it now. This is very important. I don't think I've done anything. I had a conversation like this. So thank you for all that you are doing. It's valuable and meaningful, and lets me know that not all suburban moms, and I am a suburban mom too. And in terms of sales, I know suburban moms like book clubs, and read young YA literature is so rich. It's not all CW or anything like that. You can have some highbrow literary books, and you can have some fun escapist books. There is just so much in the young adult literature landscape. And give your books, give them out as gifts. Bring your young people together. Have them come together for a banned books club outside of school. Get them on your library shelves. Get the people reading. It's good to buy the books, but I know sometimes it makes for great like shelf decor, like those color coded. Read them. And ask questions about the ideas. There's so much coming in the way of critical thinking now. There's so much that's stopping us and young people from really falling into the pages of a book. So many distractions, and book is just one of them. So yeah, you purchase the banned books, you ask for them at the library, and you read them, you discuss them, you talk about them, and I think it just makes our lives that much richer.
Yeah.
And you want creative, inquisitive, witty kids to become adults in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I want for my kids. I know Joe feels the same way. And I think, Ibi, you have 3 kids, is that right?
Yeah, 2
Yeah.
college. So I mean, what kind of books would I be writing? You know, they're doing good. They're successful kids. They're kind human beings with good character, right? Never mind what type of school they go to, never mind what kind of careers they have. They have good character because I raised them as readers. They read American Street when they were in middle school simply because I wrote it. And they know what curse words, they were exposed to profanity. They've been exposed to violence. And my daughter said it's easier to read violence than to watch it.
Yeah.
And not that she wants to, but I have a child, like if there's any kind of stabbing, she runs away. But she'll read it because there's something about just letting it sit in your imagination. If it needs to go there, at least there's some sort of layer there where it's just not invading your sight, just your senses like that when you're watching it. So if violence happens in the world and it with a book, you can pause it for a little bit, put it down and contextualize it. You can contextualize violence in a book in a way that you can't do in a movie or a video game or a music video.
That's such a good point. The layer, like you said, there's a layer there. Yeah.
Right.
I hear you.
When you're reading about it, and you're not reading it for pleasure. You're reading it as part of a story, and nuance and understanding and empathy to whatever language, whether it's what sex, drugs, and rock and roll within the pages of the book. And when you're reading it, you're able to contextualize it and bring your own nuance, understanding, worldview, perspective into that story.
Yeah. And as moms, there's an opportunity here for us to read these books with our kids, and then when they pause, when they have questions from something that they read in the book, we can engage with them, right? Like, so it's another way for us to actually engage with our children, because when they get on their YouTubes, and God knows my daughter's on all that stuff, she's not engaging with me, right? Like, so I'm disconnected from her, and I'm not there to help her navigate these questions that she has. But when you read a book like this with your child, you have an opportunity for that very thing. That's incredibly important as parents who want our children to be, like you said, empathetic and kind. I think that plus it's a bonding experience from parent and child.
It's so important to be worldly. You can travel in a book without even leaving a chair, couch. Don't you want to know what kids' lives are around the world? And I've written a picture book. It's going to be published in a couple of years about what school day is like for children around the world. So isn't that so special for a kindergartner, walking into a class of kids from other countries? So it's mind expanding, and we want that for our young people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And when can people get Nigeria Jones? Is just like a couple of days or next week? Is that when it's?
Yeah, it comes out. Oh, you know what? I got a copy. This is my college-age daughter reading an advanced copy of Nigeria.
Oh my gosh,
I didn't ask her to do this. Did not, and this is her highlighting and marking it. And
just
I raised a critical reader and a critical thinker. I'm patting myself on the back for this one. It's almost
I know. I'm like, yes, proud mama.
And when I see this, I'm just like, yeah, because I wasn't a helicopter parent. I just have shelves and shelves of books, and I allow them to be bored. The only thing I did is like, you're going to be bored. And when you're bored, you're going to find something to do. And it's usually like on the bookshelf. Like, so I'm really proud of the kind of readers that I raised, and I did not decide what they can and cannot read. And because I gave them that freedom, they were able to self-censor when it came to watching movies and listening to music. And it's not that they are not exposed to those things. They were already exposed to those things in the pages of a book and were able to turn it off, turn it up or turn it down. So with movies, they just get very sensitive. So they'd rather read a book.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh, what a proud mom moment. And I saw that May 9th is when the book comes out. I think your publisher put that in the comments. So definitely.
You can pre-order. It's out now. Like, it's out now. You'll probably get it on May 9th.
That's true. You order, that's, yeah, I can't, my daughter's a huge Percy Jackson fan, and the latest book came out May 2nd. And so she was like, you have to order it before so I get it on that day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And please engage with the words in the story. And we want people to have an opinion, you know. Mean that you read all the banned books and are supposed to love them. It means that you read them and give them a chance and think about it and engage them critically.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And you are a forever friend of Red, Wine, and Blue as well, just like Frederick.
Name. What?
Yeah, I mean,
kind of wine? What kind of? Red.
You gotta have a little fun. You gotta have a little fun. The world is so heavy and serious, and you gotta have some fun.
You do not have to explain the wine part. Red wine.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Joe. Ibi, do you have anything else you want to say before we end?
Thank you.
Yeah,
no, I'm just grateful for this conversation. Sorry,
thank
Ibi,
you.
your turn.
Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for engaging your audience in this topic. And again, it lets me know that not all suburban moms are thinking the same. I'm from New York City, so this idea of a parent-led school board is very new to me. In New York City, we just have a PTA, but here the school board politics or something else, you know. And I love it. And it's parents are really passionate about their education and their kids' education. And I totally understand it. So buy banned books, read banned books, read all the books, read the classics, you know, along with banned books. And like, I hope people think. And when we think, we can create. And when we create, we add to the world and make everything better.
Yeah. I love that. Right there. Well said. It's like she's a writer or something. Thank you both. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I will share this conversation on our IG page, and a lot of times we'll put them up on our YouTube page as well. So that might take a couple of days. But please follow us at redwine.blue. We have the campaign Book Ban Busters, where you can just figure out how to engage, just like we are now. So thank you so much. Happy Friday, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.